Jeffrey Belomo, where we discuss all things estate planning and elder law, and well, hey, anything else we want to talk about. Now, on today's episode, we are live for the first time. So, welcome to our live episode. I am joined with Josh from the JCC. Josh is going to take it from here.
Jeff, you deserve a true hero's welcome, so I'm going to provide a more thorough background for our listeners' benefit. Jeffrey R. Belomo, Esquire, is a certified elder law attorney by the National Elder Law Foundation under the authorization of the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. He received an LLM in taxation and estate planning certificate from Temple University School of Law and a BA degree with honors with an emphasis in political communication from Juniata College. He received his Juris Doctor from Widener University School of Law and clerked for the Honorable David L. Ashworth of the Lancaster County Court of Common Pleas. He is admitted to the bars of the Supreme Court of the United States, the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania, and the U.S. District Court for the Middle District of Pennsylvania. He is a member of the Pennsylvania and York County Bar Associations. Since 2010, he has been named a Rising Star by Pennsylvania Super Lawyers, being selected based on peer nominations and professional achievements. This honor is received by only 2.5% of the total lawyers in Pennsylvania and includes top lawyers who are 40 years old or younger. Jeffrey has been certified as a member of the Lawyers of Distinction, which is the fastest growing community of distinguished lawyers in the United States, limited to the top 10% of attorneys in the United States. Jeff, we are humbled to have you here.
Stop that. Oh man. Well, before we get any further, for those of you who watch my podcast and show all the time, I always do a disclaimer, and I just want to make sure we do our disclaimer this time, as we always do. Please do not take what you hear from this show or any other show for that matter to constitute legal advice. If you are looking for legal advice, please contact an attorney licensed in the state that you reside in, who practices law in the area of law that you are looking for advice in. And after you meet with them, and only then, when they discuss the specific facts of your situation, should you constitute that to be legal advice. This show and any other show for that matter should be for informational, educational, and entertainment purposes only. And there's no doubt we're going to have fun today, Josh. So let's have some entertainment.
Let's have some entertainment. And to get started, we have a special guest here with some questions, wanting more information on elder law, estate planning, wills, all of that, named Andy. Andy, please feel free to share a little bit about yourself and any questions you might have. Thanks for joining us.
I'm a retired music teacher from the Dover area. I come here to the J to work on my health. I'm interested in wills and how you go about getting them done. How long is it going to take? What kind of situation would I be getting into to do will?
Yeah, sounds good. So I think the first thing I would say is at Belomo and Associates, we educate. So what happened to my family doesn't happen to yours. So what I'd love to do is to just give you a little background and an education in a free format. We educate in our office for free in estate planning, crisis Medicaid, special needs. So what I'll do is kind of educate you on what are wills, what are trusts, what are the difference, why would you need one versus another. So a will itself is for assets that are in your name alone at the time of your death. And that'll allow us to decide who gets it, when you pass, how they get it, and who's going to be the executor. But there's also other ways to tie an estate plan together. So what we'll do is get you educated in a free workshop that lasts about an hour and a half to an hour and 45 minutes. We can do that in person or on video, and then we'll be able to figure out what the best plan for you is. All of the education is free. The information talking to the attorney is free. And then you would know the cost up front to decide, which way you want to go and the cost associated with it. So wills are certainly a tool in the toolkit, and we'll definitely be able to educate you on those, as well as you probably want to learn a little bit about financial powers, medical powers, living wills. So we'll educate you on all that to make sure that you understand all of it, and then you can decide what's the best fit for you. You're welcome. You're welcome. Do you have any other questions? Okay, fair enough.
So, well, thank you, Andy. We appreciate that. Jeff, I am a naturally very curious person.
All right.
And I haven't been able to find as much on the internet about you as I would like to. So now that I have you here in person, I have a number of questions for you.
Sounds good.
I know a little bit of your backstory and how you got into estate planning and elder law, but I want to start earlier than that. At what point in your life did Jeff Palomo say, I want to become an attorney? I want to be a lawyer. I want to practice law.
That's a great question. I just always remember in high school wanting to be a lawyer. I remember Principal Lutz would always, my nickname was Senator. He would always call me Senator when I walked down the hall. And we always talked about law. We always talked about me going to law school. But man, I don't know. I can tell you how I got into elder law later in life. But
Sure.
as far as your first question, I think I always just knew that's what I wanted to do.
Did you ever have any intention of pivoting into politics? I'm not asking you if you run for anything now, but
So, yeah, you know what I did? I worked in Washington, D.C. I actually worked at the White House for a little while,
wow.
and I got to see a lot. I got to experience a lot. I think at that point, when you're what was I, a junior in college? That was my aspiration to go into politics. And then when I was in D.C. living there, I decided that that was not for me. And I decided that I didn't want to do that anymore, but I still wanted to go to law school. I didn't want to change that dream. I just wanted to say, okay, I'm probably not going to go into politics anymore. Great experience. I don't regret a minute of it. I don't regret doing it. I think it helped me become who I am today. But I think that's when I decided, yeah, maybe politics are not for me.
It's really interesting. I appreciate you sharing that because I had no idea that you worked in the White House. Now, where are you from?
So I'm originally, well, I was born in Scranton, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
My family grew up in Pittston,
Okay.
in James Street in Pittston. That was the street that I lived on. I was just seeing a lady who was from that street posted on my Facebook yesterday
No kidding.
and said, "It's so good to see a James Streeter doing so well." So it was just cool because I haven't heard that phrase in years, which is why I'm bringing it up. And then we moved when I was in second grade out to Evansburg, Pennsylvania, which is out between Johnstown and Altoona,
Okay.
towards Western PA, towards Pittsburgh.
Mm.
And then I went off to Juniata College. Then I met my beautiful wife, and she is from York.
No way.
And so, yeah, when I graduated law school, I got an offer in Pittsburgh, and I got an offer in York. Now, my wife is going to say that this did not happen, but I assure you it happened exactly as I'm telling you how it happened. I called her and said, "Sweetie, I have this amazing offer in Pittsburgh, and my family is from there. Your family's willing to move there. Like, this would be awesome." And she said, "Sweetheart, I'm from York. I'm born and raised in York, and I have my dream job at Dallastown.
Mm.
And I would love for you to come to York. And if not, I wish you the best of luck in all that you do in life." And I said, "I'm going to York." So that is how I ended up in York. And I still say to this day, it was probably the best single decision I could have made because there's no way I would have been able to go out on my own. I think if I got used to making that kind of money, it would have been difficult to go out on your own and not take a paycheck for 5 years, live off of your wife's salary. I think you kind of get used to what it is. And so I'm so glad that I took a significant, like $100,000 less, but best decision that I could have ever made.
Wow. That is, I am in that same boat. I think both of us married up.
Yes, absolutely.
You know.
And Josh, can I give a shout out to my wife?
Yes, please do.
So because this is live, I don't get to do this, but my wife was just selected as a finalist for PA Educator of the Year.
Wow.
And it got announced on Friday. So I'm finally allowed to talk about it.
No
I'm
way.
finally allowed to say something about it. And she is just the most amazing person. She does everything for those kids. 25 years. Told every parent that's come into her classroom that she's going to love those kids as much as she loves her own. And I promise you that's true. She's always done that. And it's so cool to see her get the recognition that she deserves. So I'm really proud of her.
Wow. Well, huge congratulations. That's an
Yeah.
incredible honor. Now so she's still in Dallastown?
Yeah, she's a first grade teacher in Dallastown, Leaders Heights Elementary, and she's got 25 years in. Now, she won't find out until December, but at this point, she says it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
She'll always be etched as a finalist for PA Educator of the Year. So I'm just really, really happy for her. Now, she's got to go through another line of interviews and a whole process, but yeah, that part doesn't matter. She's there and she's excited. And So it's wonderful.
Tremendous. Wow. Wow. Yeah. Like I said, married up.
Yeah, no doubt. That's what actually prompted me to say that.
Yeah. So now I wanna pivot back. Let's go back in time a bit. You know that you want to study law.
Yep.
You know that you want to practice law. Um, Take me back to your journey, and I know you've told this story before, but of how you got into elder law and estate planning and asset protection.
Yeah. So 2 weeks before the bar exam, I got that dreaded phone call that mom was sick. She was at a show out in Pittsburgh, and she got rushed to the hospital from the show. And she had advanced stages of cancer. They were going to remove her colon and do some pretty major surgery, and then chemo, radiation. A lot of tough road to hoe. And the surgeon was like, "Look, I'm really good at surgery, but I don't know the answers to your question." And we were asking very basic questions. How are we going to get mom the care she needs? How are we going to pay for it? Is dad going to lose the house? Can we do something now? Should we have done something sooner? And he was like, honestly, I don't know. So we went to an elder law firm out in Pittsburgh. And this is, I mean, a few years ago, right? And it was $300 to meet with the attorney. So at the end of the hour, I said, well, what are the answers to the questions? And he's like, well, you have to pay me for that. I said, I did. I paid you $300. He said, no, that was to meet with me. The solution that your family needs is a $15,000 plan. And yes, we could help. You could protect assets. Your dad's not going to lose anything, but that plan is 15,000. And if you step foot out of the office today, you forfeit your $300 consultation fee. But if you hire us today, we'll roll that $300 into your $15,000 planning fee. And I said, well, you want me to hire you for something that I don't know the pros, the cons, the goods, the bads, the uglies. I don't know anything about it. You're just asking me to make you a check. He's like, yeah, all I have is my time and knowledge. So I can't give you that for free because then you don't need me. Now, I disagree, right? I mean, but at that moment, okay. So I left and I went to another law firm. And what do you think happened? Same exact thing.
Same thing.
Now I'm out $600.
Yep.
And I still don't have the answers. Mom comes down off the morphine. And of course, first questions. How are we going to pay for this? How are we going to get me the care? Is dad going to be okay? What are we going to do? I don't know. I don't know. Whoa, you spent $600. What do you mean you don't know? And I explained what happened. And I made a promise in the hospital. My promise was, I will never let this happen when I'm a lawyer. Said a young, naive 25-year-old, 26-year-old, right? Whatever I was at the time. What I didn't understand at that time was, I don't care how many initials you have after your name. I was lucky. I got the ESQ. I did pass the bar. I did end up getting an LLM in estate planning, or a master's in taxation and a certificate in estate planning. I did become a certified elder law attorney. So that gives you a little CELA. You can't pay bills with initials. It doesn't work. And the only initials that I needed after my name was a JOB, a job, because I was broke.
Absolutely.
So you get a job, now working for a law firm. Fast forward, January of 2009, I'm leaving a conference room. I put my hand out and I said, well, ma'am, that'll be $300. And I burst into tears because I knew in that moment that I became one of them. Now, in fairness, I didn't have a choice. I mean, when you work for someone, you do what they ask, you build the way they ask you to. I mean, nothing wrong. Again, that's what the industry, that's what we did as a profession.
Mm-hmm.
So I talked to my mentors and I said, look, I have a vision. I want to educate for free. I want to educate in pre-planning, crisis planning, special needs planning, life care planning, post-death administration, give all the education away for free. Tell them the costs, tell them the pros, tell them the cons, tell them the good, the bad, the ugly. And then when they're ready, they will hire. To which everybody replied, you'll never make it. All a lawyer has is time and knowledge. I've not looked this up, but I believe that was an Abraham Lincoln quote. And I get it, because the fear is if we give the information away, then you don't need it. But I believe all of life is about relationships. Everything in life is relationships. So if I'm there for you and give you everything for free, maybe today isn't the day you need me, right? Maybe Andy doesn't need a will today. But when he does need it, after he's educated, he's going to say, wait, that guy was there. That guy gave it to me for free. He didn't require me to pay for the information. He didn't require me to pay for the consultation. There's a good chance he might come back to me later if now's not the time. And I'm still fairly young, right? I'm turning 50 soon. I have plenty of time. So I'm playing the long game. And the long game is I'm going to build relationships. And then when people need something, I'll be there. One attorney in particular said, you won't make it. And in 6 months, when you're looking for a job, I'd be happy to hire you. I'm proud to say that we have our office in York, our office in Lancaster. We've got a nice firm going, and we have not once changed from the education model of free education, give the information away. And I didn't know the questions you were going to ask today, but it ties perfectly into what I said to Andy, which was I want to get you educated. I mean, I'm smiling because it's like, wow, I haven't changed at all from the vision that I had 16 years ago. And it's exactly what I anticipated, and it's working the way that I always hoped it would.
That's fantastic. And if you could go back in time and say something to that young attorney who just had that feeling after the $300, what would you say?
Follow your heart. Well, do what you believe in. It's okay if others in the profession don't love it. I think that some attorneys feel like I'm devaluing the profession because I'm giving the information away, I'm giving the secrets away. I disagree. I think I'm pro client. I like providing more value to the profession because I'm willing to give the information. I mean, let's face it, you can give somebody information. That doesn't mean that they can draft it on their own. That doesn't mean that they can write a trust and if they can, God bless. Good for them. But I still believe that they're never going to forget that you were there. So I would tell that young kid, just follow your heart and don't listen to the naysayers. It's okay to be different. It's okay to blaze a new trail. And last I trained about a couple thousand lawyers on this exact model. I used to travel nationally teaching and doing sessions, and it was all about free education. And I'm proud of that. And I think back then I was scared. Well, heck, I'm still scared. I mean, I don't know that I'll ever have it figured out, but I would tell that one, keep going, follow your heart.
I love that. And it sounds to me like you and your wife are both educators.
Yeah,
So that's pretty
100%.
cool.
Yeah, I get asked all the time, if you weren't a lawyer, what would you be? Be a teacher.
I could see it.
There's no question.
It absolutely.
Probably high school, probably social studies. I teach some wrestling, I teach some baseball, we coach a little bit. Yeah, but I get to do that too. I still get to be an educator because I think I'm still an educator first. When people ask, what do I do? I say I'm an entrepreneur who happens to practice law, who educates.
Love it.
That's what I do.
Love it. Well, let's dive a little deeper into what can be taken away from some of these conversations, some of these resources that you provide. What I really want to give folks who may be watching or listening a sense of what can go wrong with not not planning things, not taking into account everything that you need to get your affairs in order for whether it's a will or a trust. So if you want to just share one or two horror stories that you've come across in your line of
So,
work.
Josh, how much time do we have?
No time.
I will say, I think that the workshops are all built on true stories, real stories of actual clients. And yes, we build most of the workshops so that they are telling stories of things that went wrong, right? Because I think the best way we can learn from the past is what didn't go well. Um, I definitely have some stories. I think the first thing I would say is just because your neighbor was able to get away with something, or just because your neighbor did something that happened to work, doesn't mean that that's what you should be doing. And one of the phrases that I repeat over and over again is luck is not a plan, right? Luck is not a plan. So don't say to me, oh, well, my neighbor said, or my cousin or my friend said, because maybe it did work in that one case, but there's so many things that could go wrong. So, just one horror story that comes to mind right off the top of my head is a client that went to another law firm, got advice from another attorney. A loved one was in a nursing home, and they said, okay, well, nothing can be done. You have to spend down to the asset limits, 2,400 or 8,000, depending on income. And once you get spent down, then, we can assist you. So they were spending down at a clip of, 14,676 a month in today's dollars, as we talked about earlier. And ultimately, the nursing home, the social worker pulled them aside in the hallway and said, "You need to call this guy. I'm telling you that you don't need to do this. This is not correct." And we were able to protect. So that's a real horror story, right? Because not only did they get advice, but I think that they learned that there is a difference between estate planning and elder law and asset protection. And somebody who doesn't do this all the time wouldn't know that. And I mean, I'll tell you, at the very beginning of my career, I remember vividly going to a CLE, learning that you have to get spent down to those asset limits. And a client came in and said, "Mom's in a nursing home." And I said, "This is what you're going to do." And I was proud because I learned something in the CLE, and look at me. And about a month later is when I attended this national conference, and I went, "Holy cow, that's not true. It's not too late." And I called that client back, and we were able to help, a month late, but we made it right. We fixed it. We did what we needed to do. But a lot of attorneys don't get that opportunity because they don't go to that session in California where they learn about it. They don't. So I got lucky. I did exactly. I'm not judging it. I understand it. If you practice in one area, that's what you know. Um, I could tell horror stories about people who didn't have wills. And yes, there is a state rule book. It might not be exactly what you want, but at least it will go to the closest living relative. And in the case that I had, it ended up going to the spouse, the first 30,000, and then she split the remainder with the kids. And the kids did give the money back to mom. But had any one of them been in divorce, a nursing home, a car accident, they wouldn't have been able to. So it's luck is not a plan, right? I didn't plan that, but you can't plan on luck. And I just think that we could sit here and tell story after story about lack of planning. But I also think that it's not just lack of planning. Sometimes it's not getting planning from the right people who do this all the time and who kind of specialize in it and do it. I have been on record of saying I am not smart enough to be a general practice attorney. Those days are gone now, right? There are very few true general practice people because you can't know everything. I mean, no one's that smart anymore. And there's still a couple, one or two that I can think of that I think are very good, but they're not perfect or great at any one thing. They're good at a lot of things. And I never liked waking up in the middle of the night worried about whether something went right or wrong. I like to do the same thing over and over. And I like to think that we're good at what we do. And we do that area all the time.
Are you ever too young to start learning about how to protect your assets?
No, never too young. Never too young to learn about all the options. Never too young to learn about even crisis. Maybe you don't have a child with special needs, but never too young to learn about special needs planning. Never too young to learn about life care planning because we have family members, we have parents, we have grandparents, we have aunts and uncles. And what I've learned is when you're in a family, you are living through everybody else in your family. So by you learning that information, when the parents, when the grandparents, when the aunts and uncles come to you, you may not know the answers, but you're going to know, wow, I remember that guy saying something about whatever. We should probably go talk to somebody. We should probably get advice. I mean, I think my big thing about why I do so many community presentations, I just want to get the word out that maybe when you hear all you need is a will, maybe dig into that a little bit to learn what else is there. What are the other options? What happens if I have a will and everything goes out right to my children, but they lose it to a divorce, a nursing home, a car accident? If it's in a will, can I protect it during my life? No. But I think that we hear all the time, you just need one thing, and then we just go with it. So if we can educate early enough, then when that comes up, somebody will say, I think I heard something about that. Let me dig a little deep. Let me learn a little more.
I like that. Thank you, Jeff. One thing I also want to explore with asset protection, because I learned this through watching one of your many podcasts, is the type of taxes you encounter, the type of taxation, capital gains versus inheritance, and how to navigate all of that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. So So I think one of the things in Pennsylvania, we're one of, I think 5. I'll have to look at that and verify that it hasn't changed, but I think only one of 5 states that have an inheritance tax, which is a tax on the privilege to transfer wealth in the Commonwealth. And the rate is based upon the relationship of the person who's receiving the money. So people hear that and they freak. They hear that and they're like, I have to avoid that. I have to get around that. I don't want my family to pay that. But the only way really to not pay it is for that person to give up control, to put it in their child's name or put it in another family member's name. And if you watch the podcast, you know that I always say the number one thing about estate planning is control. If you can remain in control, never give up control, 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 control. I say it all the time. And I think that this is exactly the reason why. So I'll give an example. If my dad puts my name on the house, let's say it's that house in James Street in Pittston. Let's say you paid $20,000 for it in 1976.
Okay.
All right. So now my name goes on that. Who owns it? I do. Subject to my divorce, my nursing home, my car accident, my stupidity. I promise you, my father is far better off with his stupidity than my stupidity. All right. Now, let's say that he does pass and I avoid the 4.5% inheritance tax because I owned it. My dad did not own it at the time of his death. My dad did not control it at the time of his death because he put my name on it. So I controlled it. And kids think, or even parents think, wow, they avoided the 4.5% tax. This is awesome. Yeah. But what's the first thing after I grieve for a reasonable amount of time that I'm going to do with a house in Pittston that has 10-inch and HE double hockey sticks? I'm going to sell it.
Yep.
And when I sell it, what's fair market value? 200. 200 minus 20 is 180,000, subject to 23.8% capital gains tax.
Ooh.
Now, would I have been better off paying 4.5 on 200 or 23.8 on 180? Right? We all know the answer, but everybody is so freaked out about this 4.5% inheritance tax. I look at it this way. It's like a mosquito bite or like a pimple on your back.
Sure.
It's a nuisance. And maybe it itches, maybe it hurts a little bit. It goes away. Like it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
That's how I look at inheritance tax. I think I want to pay the inheritance tax, whether it's in my name alone or whether it's in a trust that I control.
I hate to see what the metaphor is for capital gains, Jeff.
Yeah, I don't have a good one. But I think that we bite off our nose to spite our face. We're so worried about this 4.5% tax that we're giving up control of assets. We're putting kids' names on things. And I do a story a lot. It's called My 3 Lands, where I teach tax land, long-term care land, and estate planning land. And I'm literally running around the room to these different lands, showing the consequences. And this is kind of what we're highlighting, which is you can avoid something in one land. But when you avoid something, you're going to get whacked from another land with a direct and opposite consequence by the fact that you did that something there. So by avoiding the inheritance tax, you're getting hit by the capital gains tax. Not to mention that once you put the kid's name on it, or you put it as a joint owner, if they need nursing, if they get in a car accident, if they get divorced, if they have an issue, all kinds of stuff happens there. So I only highlighted the capital gains tax versus the inheritance tax based upon your question.
Sure.
But there's still all these other consequences, not to mention the fact that you gave up control, right? So I love that lesson. I love the running around the room because I think the visual is good. But I also think it's good for clients to realize you can ask a professional, should I put my kid's name on the house? Should I add my kids as joint owners? Should I? And the answer should never be yes or no. The answer should be, well, in tax land, here's the consequence. Here's the inheritance tax consequence. Here's the capital gains consequence. Here's the income consequence. Here is the death consequence if it's a joint owner and the kid dies first. Here's what happens in long-term care land. Here's the consequence to doing that in tax land. Oh, let's not forget what's going to happen over in estate planning land when you give up control and your kid is desperate because he found out in 1 month that his wife was leaving him, he had cancer, and he lost his job. which happened.
Yeah.
And what did the child do? He kicked his mom out of the house that she put his name on, filed an eviction notice, and left town. So that does happen because desperate people tend to do desperate things, right? So you don't want to count on that. You always want to remain in control. So when I teach lawyers all the time, I'm always teaching them there is not there's no answer. The answer is this is what happens here, this is what happens here, this is what happens here. Now, client, what is most important to you? What land do you value the most? Okay, you value tax land the most. Okay, now you understand that by doing that, here is the consequence in this land, and here is the consequence in this land. Do you understand that if these things happen, this is what will happen? Yes. And you're willing to take that risk? Yes. Right.
There you go.
You're good. But I don't think that's what happens. I think what happens is, as professionals, we say, yes, you should.
Right.
And then down the road, they come to us and they go, well, they didn't tell us that if the son died first, that the mom was going to have to pay inheritance tax on half of the assets. I had no idea. Of course not, because we only tell half of it. That actually was a real story of me being in a bank behind a lady who was up at the teller and asked a question. And the teller's response was, ma'am, you need to hurry up and add your kid as a joint owner on these accounts. So I stayed quiet because I figured this is none of my business. But as soon as the client left, the customer left, I walked up to the teller and I said, what are you going to do if that son dies first and she has to pay inheritance tax? What are you going to do when that son ends up in a nursing home? What are you going to do when that son's up in a car accident? And she goes, I don't even know what you're talking about. What do you mean, what am I going to do?
Wow.
I said, you just advised this lady to do this, but you didn't tell them the consequences. She goes, I don't know the consequences. I just know that it's more convenient after someone dies to have them as a joint owner. I said, but I don't think you should be giving advice when all that stuff could go wrong. She doesn't know anything about what could go wrong. She only knows that it's more convenient. And I'm telling you, if we talked for 10 minutes, we would agree that it might not be convenient if anything happens that we're not expecting.
And that all ties into your approach with relationship building and educating.
Yes.
And that's exactly why I think your vision as an entrepreneur who happens to practice law works.
And who educates.
Exactly. Talk to me a little bit, because this might seem a bit niche for some folks, but you did mention it. I'm curious what your special needs planning looks like and how you go about with that process with clients.
Yeah. So education.
Sure.
And the reason I say that is because there's different types of special needs planning. There's special needs planning for the son who has a disability and who's receiving public benefits, but maybe they work, maybe they received an inheritance, maybe they got a personal injury settlement. And now, because of that money, they're going to be disqualified for public benefits. So that's called first party planning because I, Jeff, the individual with a disability, now has too much money. I went over that threshold. I want to keep my benefits. I want to maintain them, but I want to get access to the money without losing the benefits. So that's a first party trust or a first party situation versus mom and dad, grandma, grandpa, aunt and uncle want to create planning for Jeff in case they die so that Jeff has access to their money, but still gets the benefits that he's receiving. So because that money never touched me, that money never touched my social security number, it went directly into a third party, not first party, third party trust. Now I can maintain my benefits. And then when I die, mom and dad can decide where the money goes. Whereas with a first party trust, that was my money, the state has a right to get paid back up to the amount of care that was provided if there's money left in that trust. So first thing I like to do is educate on the differences. And then assuming that we're talking about a third party situation, which is mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, because that's a lot of times what I'm working with, that's embedded in all my plan. One of the things that I believe in is we can't possibly know what is going to happen on the day of our death. So I'm going to prove it, right? You can play along with me here, Josh.
Sure.
Do you have heirs?
Yes, I do.
Do you have minor heirs? Do you have any disabled heirs?
Possibly.
Okay, absolutely. We're wrong, right? Take your two fingers, put them on the inside of your neck. Do you feel a bumping sensation?
I do.
Okay, good, good. That's good. We're going to call 911. Errors are not determined until death.
Okay.
If we have a bumping sensation, we are alive. So while I tell that as a story and a joke and we laugh and we smile, if you really think about why I tell that story, if somebody doesn't currently have an individual in their family with a disability, they're not going to plan for it because they don't believe because they don't have it today. That means, therefore, they won't have it on the day of their passing. I think it's incumbent on me as the attorney to put that planning in the document as a standby in the event that there is any beneficiary who was to inherit and the receipt of said money would disqualify them for benefits. The money shall be placed into a special needs trust. So all of our planning puts special needs trust embedded right in the document. I don't ever let a document go out of my office that doesn't have special needs planning in it. Now, after I educate that family, maybe they say to me, oh no, we're talking about Jeff, and Jeff works, and Jeff has too much money, and Jeff is going to be disqualified. Oh, that's first part. Let's go a different route. But 9 times out of 10, most people are wanting to plan for a family member and make sure that they still get the benefit. So we educate. Then after we educate, we find out which way are we talking, first party, third party. If it's third party, it's just part of our normal planning. If it's first party, we have them meet with the attorney and design the plan.
Awesome. That makes perfect sense, Jeff. Now I want to talk a little bit since we're in the JCC here. The JCC is a nonprofit organization. I know that you work with folks on charitable contributions as well. And I'm curious as to your approach on how that is handled, things to take into account, best practices, things like that,
Yeah.
for those looking to have that be part of their estate planning process.
Yeah. I mean, I think at your death, providing for JCC and other charities is a wonderful thing. There's tax advantages to it as well. So there's no inheritance tax. If you do it during life, there could be tax benefits. I mean, there's all kinds of wonderful things. And what I always tell people is people who need to do that type of planning are people who are charitably inclined. I have a hard time sometimes when somebody absolutely wants nothing to do with any charities, but because they're going to get a tax benefit, now they're interested in getting taken advantage of it. Now, of course, you're not going to say no, but it's like, come on, like do it because it's the right thing to do for the organization, not because you're going to get a benefit. Now, if it happens that you get a benefit, okay, great, right? That was a side benefit of the planning. There's a lot of things out there. A lot of people will name in their retirement accounts, maybe a beneficiary as a charity because it avoids the taxation, the income tax, it avoids the inheritance tax. Right? Retirement assets are the highest tax assets that we own because they haven't been taxed for income tax purposes yet. They haven't been taxed for inheritance tax yet. So if we can give that onto a charity, talk about a great benefit that you're providing. I mean, and not to mention the charity is benefiting greatly from it. During life, a lot of people, when they have their required minimum distributions on their retirement accounts, they'll have those go directly to the charity. So what we always tell our families is talk to your financial planner about the stuff during life. Of course, at death, we can always name in your estate planning any charities that you want to name in your estate planning. But we also locally have a wonderful community foundation as well that can answer a lot of those types of questions. The charities themselves often will be able to have people on staff who can answer those questions as well. And I think getting knowledge and information is huge. I have the easy part because for me, somebody comes in and says, I want to leave 50% of my estate to the JCC, and I fill it out and I put it in the will. I mean, that's the easy part. I think there's so many other things that can be done with the qualified accounts and the required minimum distributions. People will leave all kinds of assets to charities at death or sometimes during life. They'll do some gifting to take advantage of some tax rules. Now, let's not forget that that could cause a penalty or a problem if we go into long-term care land. But from a tax perspective, we're allowed. So you can see how, as we're tying this together, there could be a little bit of a rub at times, which is why some people will just wait till death and then they'll have it go to the charity and nothing.
Now, you may not know the answer to this offhand, Jeff, but how many of the clients you serve uh, are multimillionaires?
Multimillionaires? 5%.
5%. So the vast majority of people you work with are, hardworking average folks, not with a ton. Um, and I think it's helpful to remember as well that those folks can still leave charitable contributions upon their passing and still makes a tremendous
A
difference.
huge difference. And I was recently talking to somebody who said, "Well, I only have $800,000." And I said, "Whoa, time out. You worked your life to accumulate that. You worked your butt off.
Yeah,
Be proud of it."
absolutely.
And that can make a huge difference for a charity. That can make a huge difference in someone's life, in an upgrade to a JCC in order to be able to have better facilities or better accommodations. I mean, it can change so many lives by doing something like that. And I think we hear all these things about all these multimillionaires and gazillionaires. The truth is, that's not really typical. Most of our clients, a couple 100,000 to maybe 1 million, 2 million. That's pretty much where we sit as far as our clients. But I'll tell you, they care maybe more about what happens to those assets. They care more that they're protected. They care more that they don't take a chance on losing it and being able to direct it to a charity than maybe somebody with 15 million because they value that money. They know every minute that they work to get that money.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the thing I will say as well with charitable contributions is, we here at the JCC are always willing to hear from folks because we want to make sure that if they do want to leave a gift at the time of their passing, that it is stewarded appropriately and it goes exactly where they want it to go to make that impact that they want to make.
And can they direct that for you? Like if they
Oh yeah, yeah. They can have a conversation with us and say that they're inspired by a particular program or been impacted by a program. They can make sure that's where it goes. Or if they want it to have kind of the broader impact on the organization, they can do that as well. Absolutely.
That's incredible.
It's pretty cool. So I want to talk to you as well about long-term care planning. And the reason I want to talk to you about it is because based on my own lived experience, I think it's something that can happen at any point in time
Mhm.
and that you're never fully prepared for and that the costs can accumulate very quickly. So I want to get your take on how to handle situations like that. Um, you had mentioned your mom had had cancer. My dad did as well. He was diagnosed at 44, passed away at 45. So within that 1 year time window, it was hospital visits, hospice, things like that. Um, and it was just a whirlwind of, this is how your life is going to change. And that long term care planning throughout that year, start to finish, was very intense. And I imagine that that's how it is for a lot of people, regardless of how old their loved one is when that happens. So, just to get your take on things, how do you approach those conversations?
In a crisis situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, crisis is hard. Whether it's someone going into a nursing facility, someone being diagnosed with cancer, hospice. I think that one of the things that makes me feel good is that the information education is available ahead of time. So while we offer crisis workshops, we have people attending them who are 30 years old and they're attending these crisis workshops more for pre-planning to know what would it look like if I was in that case. Because I always tell people, one of the pictures that we have in our workshop is there's a picture of pre-planning and the person is in a nice sombrero hat with a nice cocktail in their hand and they're smiling, they're pre-planning, they're ahead of time, no stress. And then the person next to them is in crisis and they're pulling their hair out and they're looking. So not only is it emotional, stressful, it's a lot more expensive. And it's really hard to absorb information when you're in a crisis. When somebody's diagnosed, when they're going through treatments. I mean, I remember my mom after one of her treatments, during it, she went into anaphylactic shock and they had to come in and paddle her to bring her back to life. I mean, that's real. But
Yeah.
when you're in that, you can't think clearly.
You can't make any logical
No.
decision.
So I think what I'll say there is there's definitely still education. There's still hand holding. There's still someone that's going to be there for you and guide you through the process. But it's still stressful. And I don't care how good people are. I don't care how good the information is. learning it ahead of time. Like I said earlier, you might not remember it, but you're going to remember, okay, what can I do now to make that a little easy? What can I do now so that if that happens, and that's what we're trying to do, is do as much of the pre-planning. Even if somebody decides not to pre-plan, they still have ideas about what they could do to make that a little easier. That's kind of what we're hoping for.
One of the things that I really like about that approach is I feel like you blend your brand of education with a tremendous empathy as well around these issues because just to take for example your story of meeting with the lawyers with your mom, there was no empathy there. It was just nuts and bolts, dollars and cents, and at the end of the day these are people's lives, and yes, they're people's assets, but they do represent the work that they've done throughout their lives, and you keep that in mind.
You know what I think too, not in defense necessarily, but if you're taught that all you have is time and knowledge,
Yep.
and that every time is money, trying to think of some of the phrases that we all know, they're not doing anything wrong. Sure, right? That they're trying to make a living, trying to put food on the table for their family. So I don't begrudge them. Your time is money and you get paid on your time, and that's all you have. So it is so hard because there's nothing about what I'm trying to do that is to disparage anyone else who does it
Sure.
differently.
Sure.
It's just, I don't know, maybe because I'm a little younger and I hope I have more time, but I'm willing to play the long game. But I don't know if that would have mattered. I probably would have done it even if I was 80. But now that I understand the difference, but I still have attorneys that I try to teach to do this and they just can't comprehend. But how do you get paid?
Yeah.
Like, if you give all that away for free, you don't make any money. You can do both. It just is, it takes a little longer. And then eventually the relationship is built and they're going to need something eventually.
I think, well, and here's the thing too, and I've done a little bit of research and reading into artificial intelligence
Mhm.
and what impact it could have on laws or profession. At the end of the day, you're still, you know, executing.
It's all about relationships.
It is.
I've done talks on this about artificial intelligence. Sure. Every day now I have somebody coming to me saying, well, I used AI and I learned, right? But you put the information in, you used a word that means X. In this context, it means Y.
Yep.
So your answer is X because that's what the artificial intelligence believes. I don't believe relationships can ever be taken. I don't believe advice in a specific situation with empathy, with crying with a family member, holding their hand in the room, sitting there with them, walking them through a situation can ever be replaced. I mean, maybe in 10 years we'll be doing a podcast and I'll be saying, Josh, I was wrong. But I don't think so. I don't think you
so
could
either.
ever replace that.
No, I totally agree with you. Uh, I think that's a big reason why I respect the work that you do and the unique approach that you take.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, do you have any questions for me?
Yeah. Just a little bit, just for my listeners, what you do at the JCC. I mean, a development director, but what does that mean?
Manager, technically.
All right.
But
So what does that mean to a layperson?
sure. So, as development manager over at the JCC, I see my job very similar to how I think you see yours, and that's building relationships, whether that's members in our community who have been here 5, 10, 20, 30, 40 years, whether it's folks who support us but aren't necessarily members, whether it's business partners in the community, whether it's other nonprofit organizations. It's building and maintaining those relationships to see how we can arrive at mutual commonality goals and help each other out.
I think this is a hidden gem in Europe. Now, I know I've got listeners all over, the state, the country to some level, but to people in and around New York, what would you say to them about the JCC?
Well, we have the big sign on the front that says everyone is welcome here, and most places they're going to say that, and it's not necessarily true. But my experience here at the JCC has been that it's 100% true.
Yeah.
Everyone who comes through the doors is welcome, no matter what they think, believe, what they look like, what their abilities are. It's been a tremendous place for my family. for my kids to attend. And it's a really, it feels like a place you can go to be the best version of yourself.
Yeah, I'll tell my listeners for sure this is a hidden gem. You got to come. The facilities here are second to none. And maybe even more than the facilities are the people. I think the people here are what makes the difference. So thank you for all that you do and appreciate it.
Appreciate it, Jeff.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And to my listeners, thank you for joining us on the Red Wagon Estate Planning and Elder Law Show. I hope you enjoyed today's episode live edition, which was really fun for me. I can't thank you enough for being here and look forward to seeing you on the other side. So until next time, we'll see you real soon. Hi, I'm Jeff Belomo with Belomo and Associates. Join us on the next episode of the Red Wagon Estate Planning and Elder Law Show, where I've got my friend Josh joining us, and we are going to have a lot of fun talking about the JCC. This is the teaser for the episode, and we look forward to seeing you there. Have a good one. Till next time, see you real soon.